to work at around 7 in the wintertime. Sarajevo is not the most luxurious place in the winter, I can tell you. I lived in a woman's house, in a Muslim family's house, who rented out me a room. I had a shower stall, a little table, and I used to be a social worker in the Bronx, so I know about these things. I had in comparative terms, I had a little table, a shower stall. It did not have any fancy curtains that you use when you're in the Westin Hotel. And the water came on 2 hours a day. And it usually would come on between, say, 2 and 3 or 4 in the afternoon when you're busy at work or you're in some godforsaken place. I remember, you probably didn't know this, but I was with Ron Brown the day of his death. And I refused to go on that flight in Tuzla. And when I went back to Sarajevo with a drive in a bulletproof Jeep and took off my suit, if you look at the Ron Brown films, with me with Ron Brown, I'm the only guy in an Armani suit. Everybody is dressed in military outfit. And when I got back with my drive in this Jeep and he sped me through the night, and I got to my hotel and took off my suit, I put it on the floor and it stood up. It stood up. So, when I hear these people on Capitol Hill talking rubbish, it's just, irritating. All of that is to say that Obama has to rely on people who can help him in this area of diplomacy. Now, I don't want to go over my time, so let me see if... Hillary Clinton, who was a fierce opponent of Barack Obama, a woman I respect tremendously, when she became Secretary of State, she came up with what she calls the 3 pillars of U.S. foreign relations. One she called diplomacy, defense, and development, the 3 Ds of Hillary Clinton. If you think about them seriously, those three Ds, it's nothing very much new in that, but she gives parity to development. Because embedded in that notion of development is that if societies develop and have through self-reliance and with some assistance, then they become presumably more stable societies. But I have news for you. Stability is not the only measure, because in many authoritarian societies you have stability. So it's institutional frameworks have to be developed so that there is a concept of rule of law. In authoritarian societies, the law is the law. And I remember when in Argentina years ago, at the court, when you were arrested as a political opponent of the existing military regime, they asked you if you wanted death or justice. And most people opted for death. because so stability is not the only answer, but it's certainly one if you want to do business. Let me finish by saying we had a financial crisis. We had a government, an opposition in Washington that brought the federal government to a halt. We have a tremendous national debt that people were threatening to renege on and wanted Obama to renege on. This sort of harebrained, sort of misguided kind of thinking that exists among some people within the beltway of Washington. It's astounding, and it's something that the president has to fight against as he tries to get his program through. Last but not least is the pervasive question of poverty. President Obama, early in his campaign, I must tell you this, Professor Meeks, I woke up guests that I had in Atlanta at 4 o'clock in the morning and my wife, and I said, we are going someplace. And they said, where are you going? It was in March 2007. And I said, we are going to Selma, Alabama. And they said, why? I said, candidate Obama is going to be speaking to the black community in Selma, Alabama at the AME Church. This is a very interesting thing to have experienced. And we sped off. And we had been to Selma, and it was to commemorate the Bloody Sunday March against the across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which we have done several times. And so we drove there, and as you know, it's a small town. The town began to look like a megalopolis. People from everywhere were coming to hear President Obama. But, you know, there's some interesting things in life. We got there and we had to fight our way into this church. And there was a church 150 yards down the road where Hillary Clinton was speaking. And there was a throng out there trying to get in there. This is the beginning of the campaign in 2007, March 2000. He said he was going to run in Springfield, Illinois in February. And in March he came to Selma. And these people were fighting to get in to hear Hillary Clinton. Well, everybody couldn't get in. And you know what happened? This is an experience that's indelible in my mind. The young candidate Obama, right, and relatively younger than Hillary Clinton were there in these two churches. And the bishop of that church, who was based in Columbus, Ohio, and this was the time, people forget, when the black community was not necessarily supporting Obama. This is the beginning of the campaign. And in fact, it persisted for some time. Maybe for good reason. Some people felt that Hillary was the better candidate. These are some realities we face in life. Choices. When you're not in an authoritarian system. So the president was, the candidate was there, and in came the bishop. Now, you have seen movies of these things, but I must tell you, if you're there, it's like you see in the movies, the ladies with those hats and those fans and, you know, and all of these things, ram-packed. I remember, you know, Juan Williams, the reporter, I was hanging on a rafter next to Juan Williams. He went to the same school as Barbara. And we were all in there. And this bishop matched Martin Luther King in oratory. I'm telling you this. I'm telling you. And this bishop was a man who was going to introduce candidate Obama. But he spoke first. He's the bishop. The place was rhapsodic, mesmerizing. You could not believe it. And he spoke in cadence. And he spoke with pauses that kept you on the edge of your seat. And I said to Juan Williams, I said, Juan, can Barack handle this? Right? And I must confess that President Obama did quite well. It was, you know, the beginning. Well, life is funny. After everybody came out of the church, at the same time, hundreds of people were coming out of the church down the street where Hillary was speaking. So a man you know very well, whom I met the other day and he autographed a book for me, named Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton was there. And they put a little sort of a table like this outside between the two churches, and the throng that could not get in was able to hear the both speakers. Well, Hillary Clinton said, Barack Obama, the great junior senator from Illinois, and Barack was saying, Hillary Clinton, a fantastic senator from New York, and all of this was going on. It was a love fest, right? You know, with Al Sharpton, the moderator, right? And you would not believe what I'm going to tell you. But since you're now stakeholders in this paper, I'll tell you. somebody whispered in the crowd, you know Reverend Lowry, the man who gave a benediction for Barack and so forth? He's a very fine gentleman, and he's an older man, and he was sitting in his car, I remember. With the door open, I said, Reverend Lowry, what do you think of this candidate? And I remember those words he said. He says, I don't, and he said it in a low voice. He says, I don't know if he can win, but we have to support him. That was that Reverend Lowry. Well, guess what happened? Hillary Clinton and Barack were having this love fest, and the word spread through the crowd like lightning that William Jefferson Clinton had arrived. Well, I'm here to tell you that everybody ran away from Barack and Hillary ran to hell. This is not a question asked. They just ran away. Bill Clinton just ran away like this to Bill Clinton. That March 2007. I wrote an article which appeared here in your newspaper in the Observer, and I said, Barack Obama's engine has gained momentum and is unstoppable. And we, Barbara and I, joined the Obama camp and went into 3 days of training, grassroots campaigning, which my dear friend Peter knows about, and campaign for Barack Obama. I'll give you 2 little vignettes and then we go to question and answers. We were in Columbia, South Carolina, and Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, and Barack were supposed to speak there. And there was a tremendous crowd. The Axelrod and the planners, poof, and these guys decided we're going to move this thing from a basketball arena into a football stadium. You know, it's high-risk business, right? Because you don't know how many people are going to turn up. So we, the organizers, were packing the people behind the stage, fearing that maybe this stadium would not be filled. Well, more and more people came, and they filled the stadium. Well, the day before, I knocked on the man's door. He is a man about 80 years old, a white man, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and I said, excuse me, I'm from the Barack Obama campaign, and Barbara was canvassing elsewhere. They put you in a bus, drop you off in some neighborhood, and I don't know South Carolina. I'm knocking on these doors, and this man with these hats that people who sleep late, the older people wear, you know, and he hi Nancy, and the man cracked the door like this. And he looked at me, and he looked with sort of consternation, and he said, you're at the wrong place. I said, no, I'm here to tell you about the candidate Obama. He says, I'm a Republican. It's a waste of time. And he said, I was insistent. I had my foot there. I used to be able to kick a football years ago, but anyhow, I used that foot. And but I was polite, and he said, you know, my candidate is Huckabee. Have you heard of Huckabee? He said, my candidate is Huckabee. And he said, you know something? I'm going to tell you something. If Huckabee is not chosen by my party, I'm going to vote for this man Obama. It's just like that. Another person who saw Barbara, and when she campaigned, she was a black woman, and she said, I'm for Hillary Clinton, I'm not going.